Hello friends, how are you today? Well, today I want to talk to you about the Schumann Resonance and human energy and what we can learn about human energy from just looking at the Schumann Resonance charts. The Schumann Resonance charts are in a range of 0 to 40 hertz, which is similar to the brainwave patterns hertz range for human beings. So that's an interesting coincidence, and today we're going to use that information to ask this question: can the Schumann resonance reflect a state of mind? And I do indeed see a state of mind reflected in the Schumann resonance, and I thought that I would make a quick video about it so that you can see it too. And earlier today I put out a video on wholeness, fractals, and integration. And this is some of the information I feel like we can learn. If you view the Schumann as I do, as a map of human consciousness, and what it appears very often is that we are switching our emphasis, like from one set of brainwaves to another, or we're creating images in the Schumann in one set of brainwaves or another, or we're receiving energy in one set of brainwaves or another. And I wanted to look at the potential meaning of that today. Here's where this video is. Right here, it's my latest video, and I think it's really interesting because many people talk about fractals as representing the individual. You know, we're a fractal of the mind of the creator, or whatever it is. I do not see it that way, and I don't actually think that's an accurate way to look at it. I do think it's meaningful, but I would slightly just tweak how we talk about that. And so I explained that in this video, and I explained how we are actually the whole. And then there are fractals of our state of being, and we use these to perceive reality. Now let's tie that in to the Schumann. Okay, this is today's Schumann Resonance chart. It's July 13th, 2022. And you can see there's this, I often call this a rod of light because it goes from 0 to 40 hertz. There's almost the structure of a gateway here. And then you have this kind of a flame look to the resonance, which can happen quite often, but I think it may be seasonal. Like I think it might be a spring, summer thing. And you can see like this big set of energy right here in this range. Well, this range here, see this green line here, that's at about 8 hertz. 7.83 is a natural frequency of the planet. And then where this is corresponds with our unconscious brainwaves back here, which are not very engaged with this. And then you get into the where the unconscious and the subconscious overlap here, in my view. Okay, this is how I interpret the brainwaves. And then into the touching the alpha state here at 8 hertz, and then maybe a little bit over that. And then you get the red appear, at 8 hertz, and then break out into, this would be sort of the alpha, but then getting into the low beta brainwaves. And one can think of this pattern as processing energy, like we process stuff out of our unconscious into the subconscious, and we observe it in alpha state, and then we start to think on it in the low beta brainwaves. That's pretty cool, huh? So this is what I wanted to show you that happened recently. Okay, so here's the long chart that I made of early July 3rd to July 9th. And if you've looked at my last couple of videos, you've seen that there was a technological effect right here, which I was dreaming about last night. And then there was this strange pattern here, and then a break in the chart, meaning there was no data. And I explained this, if you don't know about it, in my last couple of videos. So you can go back and check that if you want more. But then right after that, we started to have all this red energy at 8 hertz, and then up and down, right? Up, down into the subconscious or unconscious in my view, and then up into the starting to reach towards the low beta finally here as time has gone on. And then once there was a transformation, it really went into the beta brain waves. Then this amazing, almost like a torch of energy, it looks like flames all the way up and down the chart. And then the awakening, it's almost like there was an awakening, right? That was initiated. And there was some integration here, and that ranged, as it did here, all the way to 40 hertz, sort of the top end of our brain waves, to my knowledge, which is in the gamma brainwave area, which is close to 40 hertz, maybe a little bit up and down, above and below 40 hertz. So this is kind of a general pattern, but I feel that, there was something that happened, right? And it was something that was triggering here. So this is what I wanted to show you. It's interesting because, let me go back to my video channel. Okay, so on the video channel, I recently had a video about sky phenomena. Let me just get all my videos up here so we can just take a look. Where was it? Okay, an interesting story, the cloak and the oval in the sky. And in this story, I showed, you can kind of see it here, but there was the oval shape in the sky. And then there was almost like a drag coming off of it, and then like this beam of light, okay? And I have a blog where I have a lot of these kind of photos because I've just made a hobby of taking photos of the sky. And one thing I've noticed about people who can experience seeing, who notice patterns in the sky, and it might be, things that look like geometric shapes or even ships, or it might be other images in the sky, because the sky seems to represent consciousness many times, our state of consciousness. But I've noticed that there's an aspect of trauma, right, that seems to be in a person's background that then lifts a person kind of out of the normal everyday experience, having had that traumatic experience. And I address that in this empowering video about fractals, wholeness, and integration that I put out this morning, because essentially, and I'll link it below as well, but essentially, I talk about how we can have parts of ourselves that are fractals that we're unconscious of, and how those can show in triggering, right? When we experience trauma for whatever reason, if something just happens to remind us, and then I talked about how to integrate that. Well, if we take a look at the Schumann here, I think what happens is, so this was what I described this as essentially a traumatic event, right? There was a frequency war that seemed to occur here, some kind of interaction of two forces. After that, after a traumatic event, then I think one of two things happens. And it's super interesting. You have the experience of trauma in the lower brainwave. So now we're relating the data on this chart to I'm a human being with a range of brain waves that reflect my experiences. And then graphically, here's what that could look like on the chart. Isn't that cool? So if I'm a human being, okay, and I have now been triggered to an old trauma, or there's some conflict that happens that causes trauma in me in the moment, then what's going to happen is the past is potentially going to get triggered, but I'm also going to have a reaction in the moment. Now, depending on how safe I feel, or how able to express I feel, or my level of courage, or my level of fear, some of that energy will go into my subconscious, or even the unconscious, or I might even hide it in the unconscious state. Some of that energy may be expressed. And it's interesting because in the first red that comes up, and I view the red as some of this deep stuff, deep emotions, deep thoughts, right, from deep experiences, whether they're from trauma or great density, or alternatively, whether they're from our passion, okay, because that huge amount of energy that can get generated. Well, in the moment, right, we can stuff it like, oh, nope, you're going up here because I just can't deal with this right now. And then But maybe I can deal with it a little. And it's so interesting how right after this sort of traumatic stuff in the Schumann, potentially as I perceived it in the Schumann, then we get this. And And the image only rises a little bit into the alpha brainwaves, right? Just like a finger reaches in here. And then we have this red and yellow that goes on. Some white comes to it, which I interpret as, okay, some expanded thinking or acceptance, right? Because see, this white here is going essentially from the unconscious down to the very low alpha. So it's like, okay, now it's coming, the information is coming out of my subconscious into the alpha state, into my waking state. And then I'm doing some processing here. And maybe I ping back, right, into my history, into my past, into what's been triggered in the past. And I can bring that all the way in a spiritual way, into healing, right? I can bring it to not only my thoughts, which might be clouded, right? There's all this line here that goes from 0 to 40 hertz almost, in the middle of this. And it has these beautiful colors in a pattern that to me says this is naturally generated, but it's got a lot of dark energy in the alpha and then low beta. So maybe it's something I have to grapple with in my thoughts and emotions, the dark energy representing that. But then once I get into the high beta, where I have the ability to analyze, to sort out, to sort through, and then to integrate and experience. See how the line clears? And then you get into gamma here, or mid and then high beta and then gamma, and it's totally clear. And so this is essentially on the Schumann, the pattern that I discussed in the empowering video, although I left that standalone, talking about fractals, wholeness, and integration. Now on the Schumann, I'm showing you how that can look, in my view, on the Schumann, how the state of mind can be reflected potentially. And then back to that idea of, when you have a traumatic experience, okay, your state of observation can become heightened, and in that heightened experience, we can have perceptions, right? Because now when you're in that heightened experience, you're up here in the gamma, right? And you can have perceptions that actually, people who are really residing most of the time down here, that they don't experience. So it's interesting how trauma can push us out of the normal range of reality into these experiences where now we perceive another range of reality. And because I've been doing this for quite a long time now, I think it's been 10 years that I've been taking pictures of the sky and then also interacting and talking with people about these themes. Over 10 years, but I've just really noticed this pattern. So what I'm saying is that can the state of mind be reflected in the Schumann of humanity? I think so. And then taking it to an individual level, you can look at it like this. I can make a choice of, do I want to hang out here, right? Because here's the trauma that's being processed. And I may not want to deal with this for whatever reason. It may be too much for me. I may be in a state of denial. I may not be ready. My subconscious may not be part of this big group pushing forth of the information and having these great insights. And so, la, 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 I just hang out up here, and maybe I hang out in a very intellectual state in the high beta, and I just keep a really narrow mental outlook, right? Where I'm not open even to the spiritual experience of close to 40 hertz here, but I'm just going to hang out right here. And I can have some interesting experiences here. Look how interesting the patterns are, right? After the technological effect. I mean, and even a little bit before here, actually. But this is very intricate, okay? There are times when this is just very one color. But recently, right, you've had the patterns are so beautiful, almost feathery. And you even see that here in the blue, okay? So, or maybe I just want to hang out here and I'm a galactic girl now. and I'm, communing with higher dimensional forces or beings, or I'm perceiving patterns in the sky or patterns. I look at the trees and I see all these geometries in the leaves and the patterns of life. And, this is real. Like, people have these experiences, but there are times where the state of mind, whether you're in a hang out in that spiritual state of mind or just the intellectual state of mind, where we come face to face with either the old trauma or a new trauma, and we meet, boom. And I think that's what some of these lines represent, sometimes, especially, of course, if they're natural, going from 0 to 40 hertz, right? And especially when there's, this fiery energy. It looks like a flame here, and this is not usual, right? It's a specific type of image that is seen periodically in the Schumann, and not really periodically. It's randomly, right? Until I find a pattern, or we find a pattern. I think it might show in the spring and summer, but I haven't done enough work to really nail that if that's the accurate pattern. But I think that these moments where we come together, and we might even have a group awakening where a big part of the population goes, whoa, I have this insight. And then you have the energy go from 0 to 40 hertz. And if you're hanging out, right? Let's say I live in a way that's somewhat out of my body because of past trauma, and I've not integrated parts of myself. Right? Do you see how even this group experience that seems to happen, there's this dark blue, you could imagine that it actually extends, that it's actually behind this rod here, right? It's behind that. And so some amount of humanity can still be hanging out, right? Having that spiritual experience, not involved by choice, consciously or unconsciously. So this idea that you could have people spending time in this part of the brainwaves as a group experience for human consciousness, and then people hanging out that are not having the same experience. They're perceiving reality slightly differently because they're living in the spiritual brainwaves, or they're living in more of the intellectual brainwaves as a greater part of their daily experience of reality as a human being. And that's what I wanted to share with you. I thought that was pretty cool. The state of mind, Schumann's state of mind.